My name is Margaret, and at 68 years old, I never imagined I'd be sitting in my kitchen at midnight, questioning whether I raised a monster instead of a daughter. For 43 years, I poured every ounce of love, sacrifice, and devotion into Sarah. When her father died 5 years ago, I thought we'd grow closer. Instead, she saw dollar signs where memories should have lived. Every phone call, every visit, every seemingly innocent conversation somehow circled back to one topic: my will. "Mom, you really should update that old thing," she'd say, her voice dripping with false concern. Just to make sure everything's properly handled. As if I were already dead and buried. Just an inconvenience standing between her and my life's savings. Last Tuesday, she brought her husband Tom over for what I thought would be a nice family dinner. 20 minutes in, they were asking about my investment accounts, my insurance policies, the value of the house. Sarah even had the audacity to suggest I was getting forgetful and might need help managing my finances. Me, the woman who balanced a household budget for decades while working 2 jobs to put her through college. I watched my beautiful daughter, the little girl I'd rocked to sleep, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, whose tears I'd dried, transform into someone I barely recognized. Her eyes held no warmth, no genuine concern for my well-being. They held calculations, cold, greedy calculations about inheritance timelines and asset distributions. That night, as I cleared their barely touched plates, Sarah kissed my cheek and whispered, "Just think about what we discussed. Mom, it's for your own good." Her own good. She meant everything was always for her own good. I've spent my entire adult life putting Sarah first. I skipped vacations to pay for her wedding. I took out a second mortgage to help with her house down payment. I've been her safety net, her ATM, her devoted mother who never said no to any request, no matter how unreasonable. But sitting there in the silence of my empty house, surrounded by photos of family moments that apparently meant nothing to her, I realized something that broke my heart and ignited my determination simultaneously. Sarah didn't see me as her mother anymore. She saw me as an obstacle to her inheritance. Little did Sarah know, her constant nagging about my will would lead to the most shocking decision of my life. Mask didn't slip gradually, it fell off completely during what Sarah called our weekly family dinners. These weren't celebrations of togetherness. They were corporate boardroom meetings disguised as quality time. Sarah would arrive with a leather portfolio tucked under her arm, her husband Tom trailing behind with his phone calculator app already open. They'd barely finished saying grace before the interrogation began. "Mom, have you thought about converting your CDs to something more liquid?" Tom would ask, cutting into his roast beef. "And what about that life insurance policy? The beneficiaries might need updating." I started timing these conversations. 15 minutes of small talk about weather and neighborhood gossip. Then 3 hours of dissecting my financial life, like vultures picking at roadkill. Sarah had spreadsheets, actual spreadsheets detailing my assets, complete with current market values and projected appreciation rates. "We're just trying to help you plan, Mom," she'd say when I'd changed the subject. But her version of helping involved her having access to my bank statements, investment portfolios, and safety deposit box. She wanted copies of everything, just in case something happens. The breaking point came 3 weeks ago when Sarah brought printed forms to dinner. Power of attorney documents, pre-filled with her name. She slid them across my dining room table like a business contract, her manicured finger tapping the signature line. "Mom, let's be realistic here. You're 78, 68, I corrected. She waved her hand dismissively. "Whatever, the point is, you're getting older, and managing finances is complicated now. All these online accounts, investment platforms, cryptocurrency trends, it's too much for someone your age. Sign these, and I'll handle everything. No more stress, no more confusion." I stared at my daughter. This woman I'd carried for 9 months, nursed through childhood illnesses, celebrated every milestone with. She was asking me to sign away my independence, my dignity, my right to control my own life, all wrapped up in concern that felt as genuine as a $3 bill. "Sarah," I said slowly, "I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in accounting. I managed the books for 3 small businesses while raising you. I think I can handle my own checking account." Her laugh was sharp, condescending. "Mom, that was decades ago. Things change. You need to trust me on this. I'm looking out for your best interests." But as I watched her pack those unsigned forms back into her portfolio with barely concealed frustration, I realized the devastating truth. Sarah didn't see me as her mother, her mentor, or even a human being worthy of respect. I was simply a walking inheritance check she was tired of waiting to cash. That night, as I sat alone in the house I'd worked 40 years to pay for, I realized Sarah had made a fatal mistake. The silence in my house that night felt different, heavier, more suffocating than usual. I found myself walking through rooms filled with memories that suddenly felt tainted, like beautiful photographs with dark stains spreading across them. In Sarah's old bedroom, I stared at the college acceptance letter still framed on her dresser. $47,000. That's what her 4-year degree cost me. I worked double shifts at the accounting firm, took weekend bookkeeping jobs, and lived on generic groceries for 2 years to make those tuition payments. Sarah graduated without a penny of student debt, while I refinanced my house to cover the shortfall. It's an investment in her future, Margaret, I'd told myself then. Good parents sacrifice for their children. The wedding photos on the hallway wall mocked me now. $23,000 for one perfect day. The venue, the flowers, the designer dress Sarah insisted she absolutely had to have. I'd emptied my retirement savings to give her the fairy tale wedding she dreamed of. When I suggested a more modest celebration, Sarah cried for hours about how I was ruining the most important day of her life. Then came the house. Mom, we found the perfect starter home, but we're just $5,000 short for the down payment. Could you help us out? We'll pay you back as soon as Tom gets his promotion. $5,000 became $15,000 became $25,000. Tom's promotion came and went. The repayment promises evaporated like morning dew. The emergency loans followed like dominoes. Car repairs, medical bills, home renovations, vacation deposits they couldn't afford to lose. Each request came with tearful explanations and solemn vows to repay me as soon as things stabilized. My bank statements told the story of a mother who couldn't say no. Withdrawal after withdrawal, transfer after transfer, always justified as temporary help for my struggling daughter. I remembered Henry's voice now, my dear husband's concerned warnings that I'd dismissed to eyes. Margaret, honey, you're enabling her. Sarah needs to learn that money doesn't grow on trees. I'd defend her passionately, accusing him of being too hard on our only child. She's young, Henry. She'll grow out of it. Parents are supposed to help their children. But Henry was gone now, and Sarah wasn't young anymore. At 36 she earned more than I ever had, lived in a house 3 times the size of mine, and drove a car newer than anything I'd ever owned. Yet, she still came to me with her hand out, still expected me to solve her financial problems, still treated my resources as her personal emergency fund. The crushing realization hit me like a physical blow. I hadn't raised a daughter. I'd raised a user, someone who saw me not as a mother deserving love and respect, but as an ATM with emotions. Every hug, every I love you, Mom, every family dinner had become transactional. Sarah's affection came with price tags, her attention with invoices. As I wiped away my tears, I remembered Sarah's college roommate, Emmy, and suddenly, the perfect plan began to form. Emma Richardson. The name brought the first genuine smile to my face in weeks. Sarah's former best friend, now her self-proclaimed worst enemy. Though the enmity was entirely one, Emma had committed the unforgivable sin of refusing to compromise her integrity for Sarah's convenience. It happened during their junior year at college. Sarah had been caught cheating on a crucial economics exam, and she begged Emma to lie to the disciplinary committee, claiming they'd studied together and the similar answers were coincidental. Emma refused, not cruelly, not with judgment, but with the quiet dignity that had always defined her character. I can't lie for you, Sarah, Emma had said simply. It's not right, and it won't help you in the long run. Sarah's response was explosive. She accused Emma of jealousy, of trying to sabotage her future, of being a terrible friend. Emma absorbed the verbal assault with grace, then packed her belongings and moved to a different dorm room. She never spoke badly about Sarah, never tried to turn other friends against her. She simply removed herself from a toxic situation with the wisdom of someone twice her age. I'd always admired Emma during those college years. When she came home with Sarah for holidays, she'd spend genuine time with me, not the obligatory politeness most young people showed to their friends' parents, but real conversation. She asked about my work, remembered details from previous visits, and even sent me a thoughtful card after Henry's diagnosis. Your mother is incredible, Sarah, I'd overheard Emma say once. The way she's handling everything with your dad, still working full-time, still taking care of everyone. I hope I'm half as strong as she is someday. Sarah's response had been a dismissive shrug. Yeah, she's fine. She likes staying busy. After graduation, Emma built a remarkable career as an estate planning attorney. I'd followed her success through mutual acquaintances and occasional social media glimpses, not from nosiness, but from genuine pride in watching a young woman of integrity flourish. She specialized in elder law, protecting vulnerable clients from financial exploitation. How perfectly ironic. While Sarah stumbled through various jobs and lifestyle changes, always looking for shortcuts and quick fixes, Emma earned respect through dedication and honest work. She volunteered at senior centers, served on ethics committees, and had never once asked me for money, favors, or connections. The contrast was breathtaking. Sarah, my own flesh and blood, saw me as a resource to be exploited. Emma, who owed me nothing, had always treated me with genuine respect and affection. Sarah represented everything I'd accidentally enabled: entitlement, manipulation, and greed. Emma embodied everything I'd tried to instill: integrity, compassion, and strength. The decision crystallized with stunning clarity. If I wanted my final wishes honored, if I wanted my legacy protected from Sarah's grasping hands, I needed someone trustworthy to execute my will. Someone who couldn't be bought, manipulated, or intimidated. Someone who understood the difference between enablement and genuine care. I picked up the phone to call my attorney, knowing that Sarah's greed was about to become her greatest downfall. Robert Caldwell had been my attorney for 15 years, handling everything from Henry's estate planning to minor property disputes. His silver hair and gentle demeanor masked a razor-sharp legal mind, and I trusted him completely. When I called requesting an urgent appointment to revise my will, he cleared his afternoon schedule without question. "Margaret, I have to ask," Robert said as I settled into the leather chair across from his mahogany desk. "This is quite a departure from your previous will. Are you certain about these changes?" I'd spent 3 sleepless nights crafting my strategy, and I was absolutely certain. "Robert, I've been enabling my daughter's worst impulses for 36 years. It's time she learned that actions have consequences." The new will was a masterpiece of poetic justice wrapped in legal precision. Rather than leaving Sarah a lump sum she could squander within months, I established the Margaret Henderson Memorial Trust, a structure that would force her to confront the woman she'd become. To receive any inheritance, Sarah would need to complete 100 hours of verified volunteer service at senior living facilities, not writing checks from her comfortable distance, but actual hands-on care. Reading to residents, assisting with meals, providing companionship to the lonely elderly people she'd never bothered to understand. Every hour would be documented and verified by facility supervisors. But the service requirement was only the beginning. Sarah would also need to write a public letter of apology published in our local newspaper acknowledging how she'd treated me and expressing genuine remorse for her behavior. No generic platitudes or lawyer-written statements. The letter had to demonstrate real understanding of the pain she'd caused. The trust included a time restriction. Sarah had exactly 2 years from the date of my death to complete these requirements. If she failed, refused, or attempted to game the system, her inheritance would be forfeited entirely to the charities I'd designated. "And the executor?" Robert asked, his pen poised over the documents. "Emma Richardson," I said without hesitation. "She's an estate planning attorney with Morrison and Associates downtown, impeccable reputation, unshakable integrity, and completely immune to Sarah's manipulation tactics. Emma would have sole discretionary power to evaluate whether Sarah's efforts were genuine or merely performative. She could extend deadlines if she saw authentic change, or terminate the trust immediately if Sarah attempted deception. Most importantly, Emma understood the difference between tough love and cruelty, a distinction Sarah had never learned. The charitable beneficiaries reflected my values and delivered one final lesson. The majority of my estate would support organizations that protected elderly people from financial exploitation, provided meals for homebound seniors, and offered companionship programs for isolated elderly individuals. Sarah's greed would ultimately fund the exact opposite of everything she represented. "There's one more provision," I told Robert, pulling out a sealed letter. "If Sarah contests this will or attempts to have me declared incompetent posthumously, the trust dissolves immediately and everything goes to charity. No second chances, no appeals, no legal maneuvering." Robert reviewed the documents meticulously, ensuring every clause was ironclad. "Margaret, this is brilliant work, complex enough to withstand legal challenges, but clear enough that Sarah will understand exactly what she needs to do." As I signed my name to each page, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. This wasn't revenge born of spite, it was justice born of love. If Sarah truly wanted to honor my memory and receive my blessing from beyond the grave, she'd need to become the person I'd always hoped she could be. With the new will safely locked away, I waited for Sarah's next manipulative visit, knowing she had no idea what was coming. Thought Sarah arrived the following Thursday with a manila folder thick enough to choke a horse and a smile so artificially sweet it could have caused diabetes. She'd brought reinforcements this time. Tom lurked in the background like a nervous accomplice, while she spread sticking documents across my kitchen table with the precision of a seasoned con artist. "Mom, I've been doing research," she announced, her voice dripping with manufactured concern. "At your age, cognitive decline can happen so suddenly. One day you're fine, the next day you're vulnerable to scams, financial exploitation, poor decisions." I found these heartbreaking stories online about elderly people who lost everything because they waited too long to get help. I watched her performance with fascination, like observing a master manipulator at work. Every word was carefully chosen, every gesture calculated to trigger my fears and insecurities. She'd prepared for this conversation like a prosecutor building a case, complete with printed articles about elder fraud and statistics about dementia rates. "These power of attorney forms are just a safety net," she continued, sliding the documents closer to me. "Nothing changes right now. You keep living exactly like you always have. But if something happens, a stroke, a fall, confusion from Madikashani can step in immediately to protect you." Tom nodded earnestly from his position by the refrigerator. "Sarah's been taking financial planning courses. Mrs. Henderson, she really knows this stuff now. And with my background in business, we make a great team for managing complex portfolios." The audacity was breathtaking. Sarah, who'd maxed out 3 credit cards by age 25 and still owed me thousands in unpaid loans, presenting herself as a financial expert. Tom, whose business background consisted of middle management at a failing insurance company, positioning himself as an investment guru. "I'm not sure I understand all these legal terms," I said, playing my part perfectly. "What exactly would happen to my accounts if I signed these?" Sarah's eyes lit up with predatory excitement. "Well, technically, I'd have access to everything just for protection purposes. Of course, I could pay your bills, manage investments, handle any major financial decisions. You wouldn't have to worry about complicated paperwork or keeping track of due dates." She leaned forward. "Mom, between you and me, I've noticed some concerning things lately. You forgot Tom's birthday last month. You asked me the same question twice during our last phone call. Yesterday, Mrs. Peterson mentioned you seemed confused about what day it was when she saw you at the grocery store. Hadn't forgotten Tom's birth, deliberately ignored it after years of buying gifts for a man who treated me like an ATM. Repeated question had been intentional, testing whether Sarah would answer differently the second time. And Mrs. Peterson had caught me deep in thought about my will revisions, not confused about anything, but Sarah had constructed an entire narrative of cognitive decline from these fabricated incidents. She was building a case for my incompetence, laying groundwork to challenge my mental capacity if needed. The manipulation was so calculated, so coldly strategic, that I felt a chill of recognition. This was who my daughter truly was, someone willing to declare her own mother mentally unfit to access her money faster. "I need time to think about this," I said, gathering the documents with trembling hands that weren't quite as steady as I pretended. "Of course, Mom," Sarah said, patting my arm with fake tenderness. "But don't wait too long. These things get more complicated the longer you postpone them." As Sarah left that night, practically counting her future inheritance, I smiled knowing that karma was about to teach her the hardest lesson of her life. The phone rang at 3 o'clock on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, interrupting my quiet tea time and scattered thoughts about Sarah's latest manipulation. I almost didn't answer caller ID, showed a number I didn't recognize, but something made me pick up on the 4th ring. "Mrs. Henderson, this is Emma Richardson. I hope I'm not calling at a bad time." The familiar voice transported me instantly back to those college years when Emma's laughter had filled my kitchen during holiday visits. Now her tone carried the professional warmth of a successful attorney, but underneath lay the same genuine kindness I remembered. "Emma, dear, what a wonderful surprise. How are you?" "I'm well, thank you, but I'm actually calling because I'm concerned about you." Her voice carried real worry, not the manufactured concern I'd grown accustomed to from Sarah. "I ran into Janet Morrison at a charity function last week. No, from the hospital auxiliary. She mentioned that Sarah told her you've been having some health issues and memory problems. My heart clenched. Sarah had been spreading lies about my mental state to justify her power grab attempt, building a public narrative of my incompetence. But Emma's next words revealed her true character. Mrs. Henderson, I know it's been years since we've spoken, but you were always so kind to me during college. If you need anything, help with legal documents, someone to drive you to appointments, or even just someone to talk to, please don't hesitate to call me. I mean that sincerely. The contrast with Sarah's approach was staggering. While my daughter circulated rumors about my declining faculties to support her schemes, Emma offered genuine assistance with no ulterior motives, no mention of wills or inheritance, no probing questions about my assets, just honest concern for my well-being. That's very sweet of you, Emma. I'm actually doing quite well, both physically and mentally. I think there may have been some miscommunication about my condition. Emma's lawyer instincts clearly activated. Miscommunication. I chose my words carefully, testing her reaction. Well, Sarah has been very concerned about my ability to manage my own affairs. She thinks I need more help than I actually do. Sometimes family members can be overly protective, don't you think? A pause. Then Emma's voice carried a note of professional caution mixed with personal concern. Mrs. Henderson, if you ever feel pressured to make decisions you're not comfortable with, financial or otherwise, please know that there are resources available. Elder law is actually my specialty now, and I've seen too many cases where well-meaning family members overstep boundaries. Her delicate phrasing told me she understood exactly what might be happening, without me having to spell it out. Emma had always possessed wisdom beyond her years, and clearly her legal training had sharpened those instincts. I appreciate that more than you know. Emma, tell me, are you happy with your work? Do you find estate planning fulfilling? I love it, actually. There's something deeply meaningful about helping people ensure their final wishes are honored exactly as they intended. It's a tremendous responsibility, but also a privilege to serve families during such important times. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Hearing Emma's sincere concern confirmed everything I already knew. I had chosen the right person to carry out my final wishes. 3 months after Emma's phone call, I passed away quietly in my sleep, a peaceful end that surprised even my doctor. Heart failure, he said, probably brought on by years of stress that I'd hidden better than anyone knew. Sarah found me the next morning when she came by for another family dinner. That was really another manipulation session. Even in death, I thought wryly, my timing was perfect. Robert Caldwell scheduled the will reading for the following Tuesday at 10 o'clock sharp. Sarah arrived 15 minutes early, dressed in designer black that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She'd brought Tom for moral support, and both of them radiated the barely contained excitement of lottery winners about to claim their prize. I'm so sorry for your loss, Mrs. Henderson, Robert said to Sarah as she settled into the chair across from his desk. Your mother was a remarkable woman. Sarah dabbed at her eyes with the tissue that remained suspiciously dry. She was, and I know she'd want her affairs handled quickly and efficiently. She always said she didn't want to burden anyone with complicated arrangements. I almost laughed from wherever I was watching. Sarah had never listened to anything I'd actually said, so naturally she'd fabricate my supposed preferences to suit her agenda. Robert opened the leather-bound folder containing my will with ceremonial gravity. Before we begin, I should mention that Mrs. Richardson will be joining us. She's named as Executor, and I've asked her to be present for the reading. Sarah's head snapped toward the door as Emma entered, looking professional and composed in a navy suit. The confusion on Sarah's face was delicious. She clearly had no idea why her former college roommate would be involved in her mother's estate planning. Emma, what are you doing here? Sarah's voice carried the first note of suspicion. I'll explain everything momentarily, Robert said diplomatically. Shall we proceed? He began reading the standard legal language, but I could see Sarah's attention drifting as she mentally calculated her windfall. She'd probably already contacted a financial advisor and started planning her early retirement. Tom was taking notes on his phone, presumably tracking asset values and timeline details. Then Robert reached the meat of the document. I hereby appoint Emma Richardson as the sole executor of my estate, with full discretionary power over all decisions regarding the distribution of assets. Sarah's head jerked up. What? That doesn't make sense. I'm her daughter. I should be the executor. Robert continued reading without acknowledging the interruption. To my daughter Sarah, I leave the contents of my jewelry box and photo albums, along with the opportunity to inherit additional assets through the Margaret Henderson Memorial Trust, subject to the following conditions. The room fell silent except for the sound of Sarah's sharp intake of breath. Tom's phone slipped from his suddenly nerveless fingers. Robert's voice remained steady as he outlined the volunteer requirements, the public apology, the 2-year deadline, and Emma's absolute authority to determine whether Sarah's efforts were genuine. With each condition, Sarah's face grew redder, her breathing more labored. "This is insane," she exploded, jumping to her feet. "My mother was clearly not in her right mind when she wrote this. I told people she was having memory problems, cognitive issues. This proves it." Emma spoke for the first time, her voice calm but firm. "Mrs. Henderson, your mother underwent a comprehensive mental competency evaluation before signing this will. Dr. Patricia Welsh examined her thoroughly and found her to be of completely sound mind. The evaluation is part of the estate file." Sarah whirled on Emma with fury I'd never seen before. "You manipulated her. You took advantage of an elderly woman's confusion. This is elder abuse, and I'll have you disbarred for it." "Sarah," Robert interjected, "there are witnesses to your mother's lucid state when she signed these documents. Multiple witnesses. And there's a video recording of the signing ceremony where she explicitly states her reasons for these provisions." The color drained from Sarah's face. "A video. Your mother wanted to ensure there could be no question about her mental state or her intentions. She was quite thorough in her planning." Sarah's rage reached a crescendo. 50 years of being the perfect daughter, and this is what I get. Some impossible scavenger hunt dreamed up by a vindictive old woman and her pet lawyer. "I'll contest this. I'll fight it until there's nothing left." "That's your right," Robert said quietly. "However, I should inform you that any attempt to contest the will results in immediate forfeiture of all inheritance rights. Your mother was very clear about that provision." As Sarah stormed out of the lawyer's office, Emma sat quietly, understanding the profound responsibility Margaret had entrusted to her. Emma took her role as executor with the gravity it deserved. Within a week of the explosive will reading, she'd established clear guidelines for Sarah's requirements, complete with verification procedures that would make gaming the system virtually impossible. The volunteer work had to be completed at 3 different senior living facilities, with detailed logs signed by supervisors who understood they were legally bound to report honestly on Sarah's attitude and engagement. No busy work or passive presence. Sarah would need to demonstrate genuine care through reading programs, meal assistance, and one-on-one companionship visits. The public apology requirement proved even more challenging. Emma specified that it must be published in both the local newspaper and Sarah's social media accounts, reaching everyone who knew both mother and daughter. The letter had to acknowledge specific examples of Sarah's poor treatment of me, express genuine remorse, and outline concrete changes in her behavior moving forward. Sarah's initial response was predictably calculated. She showed up at Sunset Manor with perfectly applied makeup and a forced smile, treating her volunteer hours like a performance for an audience of Wanima, who occasionally dropped by unannounced to observe. "Mrs. Henderson seems lovely," reported Linda Chen, the activities director at Sunset Manor, after Sarah's first week. "Very polite, very punctual, but she keeps checking her phone and asking how much longer each activity will take. Yesterday she actually asked if reading to Mr. Garcia for 30 minutes counted as 2 15-minute sessions." The community watched Sarah's contorted kindness with fascination and growing disapproval. At the grocery store, the bank, the post office, people whispered about Margaret's brilliant final lesson. Many shared their own stories of Sarah's entitled behavior over the years, the unpaid debts, the manipulative tears, the way she'd spoken dismissively about her mother's outdated lifestyle. "Your mother was a saint to put up with that girl's nonsense for so long," Mrs. Peterson told anyone who would listen. "But she was nobody's fool. This will prove it." Sarah's first attempt at the public apology was a masterpiece of non-apology language. She wrote about misunderstandings and different communication styles, expressing regret that her mother had felt hurt by actions taken with only the best intentions. Emma rejected it immediately, citing the will's requirement for genuine acknowledgement of wrongdoing. The second attempt wasn't much better. Sarah admitted to being occasionally impatient, but blamed her behavior on the stress of watching her mother struggle with aging. Again, Emma's response was swift and decisive: revise or forfeit. Tom grew increasingly frustrated with the process. arguing that Sarah was jumping through ridiculous hoops for money that should rightfully be hers anyway. But Sarah had finally begun to understand that Emma couldn't be manipulated, threatened, or charmed into lowering the standards. Months passed, and slowly, something unexpected began to happen to Sarah. Something shifted in Sarah during her 6th month of required service. It happened while she sat with Mrs. Dorothy Williams, a 92-year-old former teacher whose children visited twice a year and called even less frequently. Dorothy had been telling Sarah about her late husband's garden, her voice trembling with loneliness that felt achingly familiar. "My daughter lives in California now," Dorothy whispered. "She's very busy with her important job. I understand, of course, but sometimes I wonder if I was a better mother, would she call more often?" Sarah's practiced response died in her throat. For the first time, she truly saw the woman across from her not as an obstacle to completing her volunteer hours, but as someone's mother, someone who had sacrificed and loved and received indifference in return. The parallel to her own mother's experience hit her like a physical blow. That evening, Sarah wrote her 3rd attempt at the public apology. This version contained no excuses, no deflection, no careful legal language. She wrote about taking her mother for granted, treating her like an ATM instead of a person, and choosing greed over gratitude. She acknowledged the pain she'd caused and accepted full responsibility for destroying their relationship. Emma approved the letter, but more importantly, she noticed changes in the volunteer supervisor's reports. Sarah had stopped checking her phone during activities. She remembered residents' names and personal details. She stayed past her required hours, not for credit, but because Mrs. Williams was having a difficult day. Whether Sarah's transformation was genuine or simply desperate performance art mattered less than the impact of my final act. The charitable donations I'd designated were already changing lives, funding meal programs for isolated seniors, supporting legal aid for elderly abuse victims, and establishing respite care for overwhelmed family caregivers. Emma established an annual scholarship in my name for students studying elder law, ensuring future lawyers would understand the importance of protecting vulnerable adults from exploitation. My story spread through professional networks, becoming a case study in how to structure wills that demanded accountability rather than enabling dysfunction. Most importantly, my example emboldened other parents dealing with entitled adult children. Support groups formed, sharing strategies for setting boundaries and refusing to enable destructive behavior. My lawyer Robert reported a surge in clients requesting accountability wills with similar provisions. Sarah eventually completed her requirements and received her inheritance, greatly reduced after supporting all the charitable work, but still substantial. Whether she learned lasting lessons or simply played her part convincingly enough to satisfy Emma's standards, she'd been forced to confront the consequences of her choices. Margaret's story reminds us that sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to enable those who take us for granted. By standing up for herself, even from beyond the grave, she proved that wisdom, dignity, and strategic thinking can triumph over manipulation and greed.